Aman Kapoor was one of the wealthiest entrepreneurs in Mumbai. His high-rise penthouse overlooked the Arabian Sea, and his calendar was packed with meetings, business trips, and award functions. He was always surrounded by lawyers, accountants, managers, and bodyguards. Yet despite all his fame and fortune, there was a silent emptiness in his heart. It had been 5 years since Aman's wife, Pooja, passed away in a car accident, leaving behind their only daughter Anaya at the time. Anaya was just 3 years old. The trauma of losing her mother so young affected her deeply, and soon after, she was diagnosed with autism. It was a mild to moderate case, the doctors had said, but it required constant attention, therapy, and emotional support. Aman, unfortunately, didn't know how to offer any of those, so instead of being present, he buried himself in work. He was convinced that providing the best medical care, tutors, and therapy was enough. He hired the most expensive therapists, speech specialists, and even bought special learning equipment from Europe. But nothing seemed to make a real difference in Anaya's behavior. She rarely spoke, avoided eye contact, and refused to go to school. She would often sit in a corner of her room, humming the same tune over and over again. Sometimes she wouldn't even respond to her name. To manage the household, Aman hired a full-time maid named Rukhsana. She was in her late 30s, soft-spoken, and came from a small town in Uttar Pradesh. Aman didn't think much about her, except that she was efficient, neat, and reliable. He hardly noticed her beyond a polite nod or a brief instruction. To him, she was just another employee. But behind the walls of Anaya's room, a silent revolution had started. Rukhsana had a secret passion: languages. Although she had only studied till 10th standard, she had taught herself multiple languages through books, mobile apps, and YouTube videos. Hindi, English, Urdu, Bengali, French, Spanish, Tamil, Marathi, and even a little Mandarin. Every time she traveled with her employers to different cities or countries, she would pick up a new dialect or phrase and write it down in a notebook. Language to her was not just communication, it was connection. One day, Rukhsana sat with Anaya on the carpeted floor of her room. She noticed the child tracing invisible letters in the air and whispering sounds to herself. "Do you like sounds?" "Anaya?" she asked softly. The little girl didn't respond but kept humming. Rukhsana picked up a toy apple and said, "Seb apple, manzana." Then she waited. Anaya stopped humming for a second. Her eyes moved toward the apple. Seb, Rukhsana repeated gently. "Apple." In Hindi, apple. In English, manzana. In Spanish. Anaya reached for the apple. From that day, something changed. Rukhsana began spending an hour every afternoon with Anaya. She never forced her to speak. But she would say a word in 3 or 4 different languages and show her the matching object or picture. Then she would repeat the words again slowly, patiently, lovingly. Pani, water. Oagua, lal. Red, rouge rojo. Sometimes Anaya would mimic the sound softly. Other times, she would just touch the object. Slowly, her eye contact improved. She began showing interest in the lessons. Then one day she spoke. "Wasser," she said. Holding a glass of water, Rukhsana's eyes widened. "Wasser, German for water. Where did you learn that?" she whispered. Anaya just smiled faintly. Rukhsana knew what she had to do. She expanded the sessions. She made flashcards in 9 languages, using colors, fruits, animals, emotions, and numbers. She sang songs in different languages and let Anaya choose the ones she liked. She even used hand gestures, facial expressions, and drawing to explain new words. She followed no textbook. It's just love, patience, and observation. Meanwhile, Aman remained clueless. He was too busy with meetings and investor calls. The only updates he got were from therapists who gave him standard reports, no significant change, slow progress. Consider trying new methods. Then, one Sunday afternoon, everything changed. Aman had returned early from a canceled business trip. He walked past the living room when he heard a strange mix of voices, like a chorus of different languages. Curious, he followed the sound. It led him to Anaya's room. The door was slightly open. He peeked and on froze there. On the floor was Ruxana, holding up a picture of a cat. "Billy," she said, pointing. "Cat, chat gateau, Mao, cats." Anaya looked at the picture and responded, "Cat, cat, gateau." Then, softly, she whispered, "Mao." Eamon's heart skipped a beat. Ruxana clapped quietly, and Anaya smiled. It was the first time Eamon had seen that expression on his daughter's face in years. He didn't enter the room. Instead, he stepped back and leaned against the wall. His mind was spinning that night after dinner. He called Ruxana to his study. She came in nervously, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sir, did I do something wrong?" Mon looked at her, unsure of where to begin. "You were teaching her languages," he said slowly. "9 of them?" Ruxana lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir." She likes sounds, patterns. Some children with autism connect better with rhythm and repetition. Languages have that. "Are you a trained therapist?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, sir. Just ... I love languages. And I love Anaya." Double quotes, Amon didn't know what to say. For a few seconds, there was silence. "She speaks more with you than she's ever spoken with anyone," he finally said. "Even me." Ruxana's voice trembled. "'Cause I speak her language, sir, not just with words, but with time, patience, attention. She doesn't need correction. She needs connection." That sentence hit Amin like a thunderbolt. He had spent crores on therapy, gadgets, and specialists. But he had never sat down with Anaya, never tried to understand what made her smile or cry or feel safe. He had been so busy being a provider that he forgot to be a parent. The next day, Mon canceled all his meetings. He sat with Anaya and Ruxana during their language session. At first, Anaya was shy. But when Amon repeated after her Manzana, she giggled. He tried Gitu and she clapped. For the first time, father and daughter were truly talking. Not just in words, but in spirit. A few months later, Mon invited a child psychologist to observe Anaya's progress. The report was astonishing. Her cognitive response is remarkable, the doctor said. Her ability to recall and differentiate between multiple languages is highly advanced. Whoever taught her this method deserves recognition. It's unconventional, but brilliant. Eamon smiled. He looked at Ruxana, who stood silently in the corner, half embarrassed, half happy. That evening, made an announcement at home. From today, Ruxana is not just a maid. She's Anaya's learning coach and a member of this family. He offered to sponsor her education. Encouraged her to get certified in child psychology and special education. Even built a language learning room for Anaya and her. Over time, Anaya began speaking more fluently. She started expressing feelings, naming emotions, even singing songs in Spanish and French. She wasn't cured, but she was blooming. She had found her way to connect with the world, and it all started with one woman who saw her not as a problem, but as a person. One day at a school event for children with special needs, Anaya stood on stage. She greeted the audience in Hindi, English, Spanish, French, Tamil, Bengali, German, Urdu, and Mandarin. Each word was clear, deliberate, and heartfelt. In the front row, Aman wiped away a tear. "Everything will be okay." He thought, no. Everything is okay, because sometimes angels don't come with wings. They come with an apron, a kind voice, and a heart full of love.